He lived alone with his baby until an Apache woman changed his fate. Her sudden passing had left him alone with a tiny bundle of life, his infant daughter, Lily. Holding her for the first time after that day had been both comforting and terrifying. She was so small, so fragile, and everything about her reminded him of the woman he had lost. Her tiny hands, her soft cries, and even her quiet breathing at night made him feel both protective and hopeless at the same time. He was determined to care for her, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a stone. The cabin itself was small, a simple wooden structure surrounded by tall trees and the kind of silence that only came in places far from towns and neighbors. The mountains stretched endlessly beyond, beautiful and harsh all at once. It was peaceful, yes, but also lonely. The kind of lonely that settled into your bones. John would often look out of the small window, watching the snow fall in winter or the mist rise from the valleys in the morning, and feel a mixture of awe and despair. The world was vast, full of life, yet he felt trapped in a tiny bubble of grief and responsibility. Every day was a challenge. Cooking was simple in theory, but John had never really cooked more than the occasional meal before. Now he had to prepare food for himself and for Lily, making sure it was safe and healthy. There were nights when she would cry endlessly, and no matter what he tried, rocking, singing, feeding, nothing seemed to soothe her. The exhaustion was constant. He would sit by the fireplace in the early hours of the morning, cradling her in his arms, feeling every ache in his body. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it was interrupted by the sound of a tiny whimper. Despite his struggles, John refused to give up. He had promised his wife that he would care for Lily no matter what. That promise had become his guiding light, the one thing that gave him purpose each day. He would talk to her softly as he bathed her, changing her tiny clothes and cleaning her delicate skin. He would hum little tunes that reminded him of his wife, hoping that somehow, through the music and his voice, Lily could feel the warmth and love that had once filled their home. Living alone with a baby meant learning new skills quickly. John learned to wash clothes by hand, to fix broken shelves, and to gather water from the nearby stream. He discovered that the forest around the cabin could provide more than just beauty. There were herbs for minor ailments, berries for snacks, and plenty of firewood to keep the cabin warm. Each discovery felt like a small victory, a reassurance that he could survive and provide for his daughter. Slowly, the wilderness, once intimidating, became a part of his life, a place of lessons and quiet strength. But the solitude had a cost. There were moments when the weight of loneliness became unbearable. Friends and relatives were far away, and even neighbors in the nearest town seldom came by. The quiet, once soothing, began to echo the emptiness in his heart. He missed conversation, human connection, and the simple comfort of someone understanding his struggles without explanation. Nights were the hardest. After tucking Lily into her small crib, he would sit by the window, staring at the stars, and wonder if he was doing enough, if he was failing her in ways he could not see. John also struggled with fear. Every small sound at night, the rustle of leaves, the creaking of the cabin floor, the distant howl of a coyote, made him tense. What if something happened to Lily? What if he made a mistake? The questions haunted him, but he forced himself to act, to learn, to adapt. He read old parenting books he found at a local library during rare trips to town, watched every online video he could about raising infants, and slowly, painstakingly, built his confidence. He realized that love alone was not enough. Patience, knowledge, and courage were equally important. Despite the hardships, John noticed moments of pure joy. Lily's first smile, a tiny sound of laughter, the way her eyes would light up when he held her close, these moments became his treasures. They reminded him that life could still be beautiful, even amid sorrow. He began documenting small milestones, writing them down in a worn notebook. Her first crawl, her first word, the way she reached out to touch the sunlight streaming through the window. Each moment was a victory against the darkness that had once threatened to engulf him. John also began to form a routine, which brought a sense of stability to their lives. Mornings were spent feeding Lily, cleaning up, and walking through the nearby woods when the weather allowed. Afternoons were for playtime, storytelling, and learning simple things like colors and sounds. Evenings were spent cooking, bathing her, and finally, trying to rest. The routine became a lifeline, a way to create order in a world that had once felt chaotic and overwhelming. As weeks turned into months, John noticed changes in himself. He became more patient, more observant, and more resilient. The isolation that had once seemed unbearable now carried a quiet strength. He had become attuned to every sound, every movement, every little sign of Lily's needs. And in return, Lily began to respond to him, not just with cries or smiles, but with recognition, trust, and attachment. A bond was forming, one that neither grief nor solitude could break. Yet even as he adapted, John felt a lingering emptiness. There was no one to share his thoughts with, no one to offer guidance or support when decisions became too difficult. He missed the simple joys of human connection, laughter with friends, advice from someone experienced, or even just a warm conversation by the fire. The mountains were beautiful, the forest serene, but they were not enough to fill the hole left by loss. One particularly cold winter night, John sat by the fire, Lily sleeping peacefully in his arms. Snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in white. The cabin was quiet, save for the crackling of the fire and the soft breathing of his daughter. In that stillness, he reflected on how far he had come. He had learned to cook, to care, to survive. He had built a home, not just a shelter, and in doing so had discovered strength within himself he had never known. Yet, he also knew that this was only the beginning. Life had more challenges ahead, and he would face them for Lily. For John, the solitude of the mountains had become both a trial and a teacher. It taught him patience, resilience, and the depth of his love for Lily. Each day brought new challenges, but also new rewards. And even in the darkest moments, he found hope. A quiet hope that someday, perhaps, life would bring companionship, guidance, and unexpected blessings. Until that day came, he would continue to care for his daughter with every ounce of his being, knowing that love, determination, and courage were the only tools he needed to survive, and perhaps even thrive. In a world that had once seemed so empty, John's life had settled into a quiet rhythm, a world defined by the needs of his daughter and the unchanging wilderness around him. The days were predictable, each one a mixture of small victories and constant challenges. He had become skilled at managing his little home, learning to stretch food supplies, gather firewood, and soothe Lily when she cried. Yet despite these accomplishments, a deep sense of solitude lingered. He often wondered if there could be anyone who understood his struggles, someone who could see past his exhaustion and the mask of calm he wore each day. It was on one of those crisp autumn mornings that everything began to change. John had decided to walk a little further into the forest to collect firewood for the coming winter. The leaves crunched beneath his boots, and the air smelled of damp earth and pine. Lily sat snugly in her baby carrier on his chest, eyes wide as she took in the world around her. John enjoyed these moments, the quiet, the simplicity, but he also remained vigilant. The forest could be unpredictable. Branches fell without warning, streams swelled after rains, and wild animals were never far away. As he walked along a narrow path near a small creek, he noticed a figure in the distance. At first, he thought it was another hiker or perhaps a hunter. But as he drew closer, he realized it was a woman. She moved with a calm confidence, bending to inspect plants along the path. Her presence was unusual in this part of the forest, so far from the nearest town. Her hair was dark and long, braided in a traditional style that reflected a connection to her heritage. Her clothes were simple but practical for the forest, and she carried a small bundle of herbs in a worn cloth bag. John stopped at a safe distance, unsure whether to approach. He was protective of Lily and cautious of strangers, especially in such a remote area. But the woman's calm demeanor, the careful way she moved, suggested she meant no harm. She looked up and caught his gaze, offering a small, polite nod. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled the leaves and the creek gurgled softly. John felt a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice gentle yet firm. "You have a baby with you. Are you alone here?" John hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Most people would have thought him foolish to live so isolated with a child. "Yes," he said finally, "it's just me and her." The woman nodded, her eyes kind but observant. "It's not easy. I can see that," she said. There was a weight in her words, as if she understood more than she should. Her presence felt calming, like a quiet river flowing through a storm. Over the next few days, their paths crossed repeatedly. She introduced herself as Aeon, an Apache healer who traveled through the region collecting herbs and sharing her knowledge with those in need. At first, John kept his distance, wary of involving anyone in his life. But Aeon's presence was persistent, never intrusive, always respectful. She noticed his struggles with Lily, how he soothed her when she cried, how he struggled to feed her efficiently, and how exhaustion weighed heavily on him. Without judgment, she offered advice and small acts of kindness. One morning, as John struggled to light a fire in damp conditions, Aeon appeared with a small bundle of dry twigs and some guidance. "Try these," she said softly, demonstrating a method he had never considered. The fire caught quickly, and John felt a rush of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he muttered, surprised at the ease with which her help felt natural. She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and for the first time in months, John felt a sense of connection beyond the solitude of his cabin. As the days passed, Aeon shared more than practical advice. She taught him about the forest, the healing properties of plants, and ways to care for Lily that went beyond basic survival. She showed him how to make simple remedies for minor ailments, how to prepare natural teas, and even how to create small toys and playthings to entertain the baby. John listened intently, absorbing every word. Her knowledge was vast, and she delivered it with patience, never making him feel inadequate or incapable. Lily, too, responded to Aeon immediately. The baby's eyes would light up when she approached, her tiny hands reaching out in curiosity. She laughed at Aeon's gentle songs and seemed soothed by the woman's presence. Watching them interact, John felt a warmth he had not experienced in a long time. It was as if the cold, lonely cabin had suddenly become brighter, filled with life and energy. He realized that Aeon's visits were not just practical, they were healing his heart in ways he had not known were possible. Despite this growing bond, John remained cautious. He had been alone for so long, learning to rely only on himself, that trusting someone else felt foreign and frightening. Yet Aeon never pushed him. She respected his boundaries, allowing him to open up at his own pace. Slowly, he began to share small pieces of his life, stories of his wife, memories of their time together, and even his fears about raising Lily alone. Aeon listened without judgment, offering gentle reassurance and wisdom. Her presence became a safe space where John could admit his vulnerabilities without fear. One day, as autumn leaves painted the forest in shades of gold and red, John confided in Aeon about his loneliness. "I've managed for months," he said quietly, "but some days it feels like I'm failing her. I'm scared that I'm not enough." Aeon placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You are enough," she said simply. "Love is the strongest force you have. Everything else, patience, learning, resilience, can grow, but your love is already a foundation for her life." Her words sank deep into his heart, planting a seed of confidence he had long thought impossible. As the season changed, so did John's routine. He began to welcome Aeon's visits, seeking her guidance not just on survival, but on creating a nurturing environment for Lily. Together, they worked on small projects in the cabin, improving her sleeping area, creating a safer space for play, and organizing supplies efficiently. John found joy in these tasks, feeling a sense of accomplishment and partnership he had not known he was missing. Through their time together, John also learned about Aeon's heritage. She shared stories of her people, their traditions, and their deep connection to the land. These stories fascinated him, offering a new perspective on life, resilience, and community. He listened eagerly, absorbing every detail, realizing that there was a world beyond the mountains and the cabin that could offer guidance, wisdom, and hope. Even Lily seemed to sense the importance of this connection. She would crawl toward Aeon during their visits, giggling as she explored the small bundle of herbs or reached for the simple toys Aeon had crafted. John watched with pride and gratitude, realizing that this woman had become a bridge, connecting them to a wider world and, more importantly, bringing light into their isolated lives. Yet, despite the growing bond, life in the forest remained challenging. Winter was approaching, and John worried about ensuring warmth, food, and safety for Lily. Aeon helped him prepare, sharing techniques for storing food, insulating the cabin, and gathering enough firewood for the long months ahead. Her practical guidance, combined with emotional support, gave John a sense of stability he had not felt since the loss of his wife. He began to believe that, with her help, they could face the challenges together. By the time the first snowflakes fell, John realized how much his life had shifted. The solitude that once seemed absolute had softened. There was laughter, learning, and connection filling the cabin alongside the crackling fire. He no longer felt like a man struggling alone. He felt like part of a small, growing family. Aeon's presence had not only offered practical help, but had begun to reshape his world, teaching him that trust and connection could exist even in the most unexpected places. Looking back, John understood that their meeting had been more than coincidence. It was a turning point, a moment when the universe had offered a lifeline. He had been surviving barely, but Aeon's guidance showed him how to live fully again. He began to dream, not of the past, but of a future filled with hope, warmth, and the promise of companionship. Life with Lily was no longer just about survival. It was about joy, learning, and shared moments that would define their days together. And as the winter wind howled outside the cabin, John sat beside the fire, holding Lily in his arms while Aeon tended to the hearth. He felt a quiet gratitude, a sense of peace he had thought lost forever. In the midst of the forest, in the harsh beauty of isolation, a new chapter had begun, a chapter defined not by loss, but by connection, resilience, and the unexpected blessings that life could bring. As winter deepened, John found himself reflecting on the quiet transformations happening in his life. The once harsh and lonely cabin now carried warmth and laughter, much of it thanks to Aeon. She had become a constant presence, a guide not just in practical matters but in the subtle art of living with patience, understanding, and connection. John began to realize that raising Lily was not merely about feeding her and keeping her safe. It was about nurturing her spirit and fostering a sense of love, security, and curiosity. Aeon had a gentle way of teaching that John admired. She never rushed him or made him feel inadequate. Instead, she guided him step by step, encouraging him to notice the small details that made a huge difference in Lily's life. She showed him how to interpret her cries, how to read the subtle shifts in her mood, and how to respond in ways that encouraged trust and confidence. Through these lessons, John began to see that parenting was not about perfection but about awareness, love, and patience. One snowy afternoon, as they sat near the fireplace, Aeon handed John a small bundle of herbs. "These can help with colds and minor discomforts," she explained. But more importantly, John, you are learning to listen to her, to yourself, and to the world around you. That is the greatest medicine of all. John listened intently, absorbing her words, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the fire. For months, he had felt like a man surviving, struggling to keep life together. Now, he felt like a man beginning to truly live. John began to apply what Aeon taught him, not only in caring for Lily, but also in caring for himself. He realized that his exhaustion and stress had not only affected him, but had also subtly influenced Lily. By slowing down, taking moments to breathe, and noticing the beauty around him, the sound of wind in the pines, the sparkle of frost on the branches, he discovered a calm that Lily seemed to sense as well. Their bond deepened. She looked to him for comfort, guidance, and love, and he was more capable than ever of providing it. Aeon also introduced John to simple rituals that enriched their daily lives. They would spend quiet mornings collecting herbs, learning their uses, and discussing the stories and traditions behind them. Afternoons were for crafting simple toys for Lily or building small improvements in the cabin. Evenings often ended with storytelling. Aeon shared tales of her people, their struggles, resilience, and deep respect for nature. John began to appreciate the wisdom in these stories and realized how much they could teach him about patience, strength, and the value of community. Through these shared experiences, John's trust in Aeon grew. At first, he had been cautious, hesitant to rely on anyone outside himself. But her presence had proven steady and consistent. She never judged his mistakes, only offered gentle guidance. She never forced herself into his life, only provided support when needed. Slowly, he felt the walls around his heart begin to soften. He began to confide in her more openly, sharing memories of his wife, expressing fears about raising Lily, and even acknowledging feelings of loneliness and self-doubt he had long suppressed. Lily seemed to respond to this change as well. The baby's eyes would follow Aeon wherever she went, but she would also cling to John with a newfound trust. Their small home was no longer just a shelter. It had become a space of learning, laughter, and emotional growth. John often caught himself smiling at the little moments, the way Lily would reach for the herbs Aeon carried, or the delighted giggles she would emit when John joined in her play. These moments reminded him that love and care were more powerful than any fear or hardship. Aeon also helped John understand the importance of balance. She encouraged him to rest when he needed it, to accept help without guilt, and to recognize that being a good father did not mean doing everything perfectly. Strength, she said one afternoon, is not in doing everything alone. It is in knowing when to reach out, when to listen, and when to allow love to guide your actions. Her words resonated deeply with John. For so long, he had equated independence with survival. Now, he began to see independence as something broader, a balance between self-reliance and openness to others. The forest, which had once felt isolating, now became a classroom for life's lessons. John noticed how Aeon's connection to nature influenced her wisdom. She taught him to observe the patterns in the forest, the way certain plants thrived in shade, how animals anticipated seasonal changes, and how small details often held the key to survival and well-being. These lessons mirrored the care required in raising Lily. He realized that attention, patience, and respect for natural rhythms were essential both in the forest and in parenthood. John also began to understand the subtle emotional intelligence Aeon modeled every day. She would sense Lily's mood shifts, notice when John needed encouragement, and approach challenges with calmness rather than urgency. Watching her, he learned to slow down his own reactions, to approach problems thoughtfully, and to act with intention rather than impulse. These lessons transformed the atmosphere in the cabin. Arguments, frustrations, and small anxieties began to fade, replaced by laughter, curiosity, and a growing sense of security. One evening, As the wind howled outside and snow piled against the cabin walls, John reflected on how far he had come. He remembered the early days when he had been overwhelmed by fear and doubt. Nights when Lily's cries seemed endless, when his body ached from exhaustion, and when loneliness threatened to overwhelm him. Now, despite the hardships that still existed, he felt capable, resilient, and hopeful. Aeon had taught him that challenges were not obstacles but opportunities for growth. Each day of learning, each small success, each shared laugh with Lily was proof of his progress. John's emotional growth was mirrored in his interactions with Lily. He learned to read her cues, anticipate her needs, and create an environment that nurtured her curiosity and development. They spent hours together exploring the forest, crafting little games, and enjoying the simplicity of life. Lily's laughter became a daily reminder of the joy that could exist even in challenging circumstances. John realized that the depth of his love for her was matched only by his growing understanding of what it meant to truly care for another human being. Through all of this, Aeon remained a steady guide. She offered wisdom, encouragement, and practical advice, but she also gave John the space to grow independently. She never replaced the role of a father, she only strengthened it. Her guidance allowed John to see that love, patience, and resilience could transform life's difficulties into opportunities for connection and growth. Slowly, he began to understand that the cabin, once a place of solitude, had become a sanctuary, a place where learning, love, and hope intertwined. By the end of the winter, John felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had not only survived the months with Lily, but had begun to thrive. His bond with his daughter had deepened, and he had grown into a father capable of providing love, guidance, and stability. Aeon had not simply been a helper. She had become a mentor, a teacher, and a friend who had shown him how to embrace life fully once more. The lessons he learned from her, about patience, observation, emotional awareness, and resilience, would stay with him for the rest of his life. Looking out over the snow-covered forest one morning, John realized that his perspective had changed completely. Where he had once seen only hardship and isolation, he now saw opportunity, growth, and connection. He understood that the wilderness had tested him, but with Aeon's guidance, it had also taught him invaluable lessons. He felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, confident that he could provide a loving and nurturing life for Lily, no matter what obstacles arose. In those quiet, snowy days, John also came to a profound understanding about the nature of trust. He had learned that opening one's heart did not mean vulnerability in a negative sense. It meant allowing support, love, and wisdom to enter life in a meaningful way. Aeon had taught him that relationships were not about dependence, but about mutual growth. Through this trust, John found strength he never knew he possessed, and his relationship with Lily blossomed in ways he had only dreamed of in the earliest, lonely months after his wife's passing. And so, by the time the forest began to hint at spring, John had been transformed, not just as a father but as a person. He had discovered the depth of his capacity for love, the importance of patience, and the power of connection. Aeon's guidance had been instrumental, but the real change had come from within him. The realization that he could face life's challenges with courage, wisdom, and an open heart. The cabin, once a place of isolation, had become a haven of growth, love, and shared joy. Spring arrived in the mountains with gentle warmth, the snow melting into streams that glistened in the sunlight. The forest, once white and silent, now pulsed with life. Birds sang in the trees, flowers bloomed along the forest floor, and the air carried the fresh scent of growth. For John, this season felt symbolic. It mirrored the changes in his own life, the growth he had experienced, and the new possibilities unfolding for him, Lily, and Aeon. The cabin, once a place of isolation, had now become a hub of warmth, laughter, and life. John noticed the difference immediately. Lily had grown stronger and more curious with each passing day. Her eyes sparkled with wonder as she explored the world around her, often reaching out for the small plants and flowers that Aeon introduced her to. John delighted in seeing her learn, laugh, and grow. He had become attuned to her every movement, understanding her needs even before she could express them. And Aeon had been a constant guide, helping him recognize these subtle cues and respond in ways that encouraged her development and happiness. Life had become a rhythm of collaboration and shared care. Aeon worked alongside John, helping with chores, teaching new skills, and guiding him in parenting decisions. She showed him how to create playful learning experiences for Lily, using natural materials from the forest. Simple wooden toys, colorful leaves, and soft moss became instruments of joy and education. John found that these activities not only entertained Lily, but also deepened the bond between father and daughter. He realized that parenting was not just about providing food and safety, but about nurturing curiosity, creativity, and confidence. The cabin itself began to change as well. With Aeon's guidance, John improved the living space to make it safer and more comfortable for Lily. They built small shelves to organize her clothes and toys, reinforced the crib, and even created a small play area near the fireplace. Aeon taught John how to store food safely for the warmer months, how to make simple remedies for minor ailments, and how to use herbs to enhance daily meals. Every improvement was a small victory, a symbol of growth and teamwork. The once cramped and stark cabin now felt like a true home, a place of safety, learning, and warmth. Neighbors and villagers began to notice the changes, too. John had once been a solitary figure, rarely seen outside the cabin. Now, his visits to the town for supplies carried a different energy. People saw the calm confidence in him, the joy in his interactions with Lily, and the subtle strength Aeon brought to his life. They began to offer friendly greetings, small acts of help, and even advice, creating a sense of community that John had thought impossible. He realized that isolation had been partly a choice born of grief, and that opening himself to others brought unexpected blessings. Aeon's presence continued to guide both John and Lily in emotional growth. She emphasized the importance of expressing feelings openly, of speaking with kindness, and of approaching challenges with patience. She encouraged John to share his thoughts with Lily, even in ways that seemed small or insignificant. Every word, every touch, every smile shapes her world, she would remind him. John listened, learning that parenting was an ongoing conversation, not just with words but with gestures, attention, and love. Lily thrived under this nurturing environment. She learned quickly, her curiosity fueled by Aeon's teachings and John's patient guidance. She discovered the joy of simple activities, gathering flowers, observing insects, listening to the birds, and feeling the textures of different plants. John encouraged her exploration, guiding her gently while allowing her freedom to learn from her surroundings. These experiences taught Lily confidence, patience, and a deep respect for the world around her. As the months passed, John and Aeon began to share moments beyond practical guidance. They worked together in the garden, planting vegetables and herbs for the family. They prepared meals together, laughing as Lily tried to imitate their actions. Evenings were often spent storytelling, with Aeon sharing the wisdom and traditions of her people, and John recounting small family memories, bridging the past with the present. These shared experiences strengthened their bond, creating a sense of partnership and mutual respect. John found himself opening up in ways he had never expected. He shared his fears about the future, his dreams for Lily, and the lingering sadness of losing his wife. Aeon listened patiently, offering encouragement and guidance. Her presence gave him the confidence to acknowledge emotions he had long suppressed. He realized that true strength was not in hiding pain, but in facing it with courage, allowing love and support to guide him. The growing sense of family extended to the forest and community around them. John and Aeon taught Lily to observe the natural world with care, to respect animals and plants, and to understand the interconnectedness of life. They visited the small village occasionally, introducing Lily to other children and neighbors. The shy, solitary father who had once avoided human contact now found joy in these interactions. He realized that life was richer when shared, and that a supportive community could enhance the love and care he provided for his daughter. One particularly memorable day, John, Aeon, and Lily spent hours exploring a small clearing in the forest. Sunlight streamed through the trees, casting patterns on the ground, and the air was alive with birdsong. Aeon taught Lily how to recognize different plants and their uses, while John encouraged her to notice the shapes and colors around her. Lily's laughter echoed through the clearing as she ran freely, discovering the world with joy and wonder. John felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The struggles of the past year, the sleepless nights, the fear, the loneliness, felt distant. This moment, simple yet profound, symbolized the transformation of their lives. Through these experiences, John also began to reflect on his own growth. He had learned patience, resilience, and emotional awareness. He understood the importance of nurturing not only Lily but himself, allowing space for rest, reflection, and connection. He recognized that love required both giving and receiving, and that partnership with Aeon had taught him how to balance independence with support. The lessons extended beyond parenting. They were about life itself. As summer approached, the family continued to thrive. John noticed that Lily had developed a sense of confidence and curiosity that amazed him. She explored the world with energy and joy, asking questions, discovering patterns, and expressing herself with laughter and delight. Aeon's guidance, combined with John's care, had created an environment where Lily could flourish. Each milestone, her first steps across the cabin floor, her first attempts at speaking full sentences, was celebrated with warmth, encouragement, and pride. John and Aeon's partnership deepened as well. They had learned to communicate without words at times, understanding each other's needs and intentions through gestures, expressions, and shared experiences. Their relationship was not defined by romance alone, but by trust, respect, and a shared commitment to Lily's well-being. Together, they created a nurturing, safe, and joyful home, a place where love, learning, and growth were intertwined. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, John sat on the porch holding Lily while Aeon prepared a simple meal inside. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the forest alive with the sounds of birds returning to their nests. John reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a place of grief and isolation, he had grown into a father capable of love, patience, and resilience. Aeon had guided him, but the strength had come from within. He understood that life's greatest transformations often began with small acts of trust, guidance, and openness. The days passed with a rhythm of learning, exploration, and shared joy. John, Aeon, and Lily created traditions that would last a lifetime: morning walks in the forest, afternoon storytelling sessions, and evening songs by the fire. They celebrated milestones, both big and small, and found comfort in the simple beauty of their surroundings. John realized that happiness was not a destination, but a series of moments, each shaped by love, care, and connection. By the end of summer, the cabin had fully transformed. It was no longer just a place of shelter. It was a home filled with life, warmth, and hope. John had become not only a capable father, but a man who understood the importance of connection, resilience, and trust. Lily thrived in this environment, her laughter and curiosity filling every corner. Aeon had not only changed their daily lives, but had reshaped the very foundation of their family, showing them the power of love, guidance, and shared growth. Looking at Lily playing in the sunlight, John felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had tested him in ways he never imagined, but those challenges had also brought lessons, growth, and unexpected blessings. The cabin, once a place of solitude and struggle, was now a sanctuary of love, learning, and joy. John knew that their journey was ongoing, but he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Together they had built a family, not defined by blood alone but by trust, care, and shared experience. And as the seasons continued to change, John understood something profound: that life's hardships could lead to strength, that love could grow in unexpected ways, and that the bonds formed through trust, patience, and guidance could transform even the loneliest existence into one of joy, hope, and enduring connection. The years had passed quickly, yet each moment had been rich with growth, love, and learning. John looked back on the journey that had brought him from isolation and grief to a life filled with warmth, connection, and hope. The once lonely cabin in the mountains had transformed into a home, a place of laughter, learning, and love. And at the heart of this transformation was Aon, the Apache woman who had changed the course of his life, guiding him with wisdom, patience, and care. Lily had grown into a curious, intelligent, and joyful child. Her laughter echoed through the cabin and the forest beyond, bringing light into every corner of their lives. She had learned to explore the world with confidence, guided by both John's steady care and Aon's gentle teaching. She understood the rhythm of the forest, the names and uses of the plants Aon had shown her, and the importance of kindness and respect for all living things. John watched her with pride, realizing that every small step of growth was a reflection of the love, attention, and guidance that had surrounded her since birth. John himself had changed in ways he had never anticipated. The man who had once struggled with loneliness and self-doubt had become a confident, capable father. He had learned patience, resilience, and emotional awareness, and had grown into someone who could face life's challenges with determination and hope. Aon's influence had been profound, but the transformation had come from within him, through his willingness to learn, to trust, and to open his heart again. The bond between John and Aon had deepened over the years. Their relationship was built not on haste or fleeting emotion, but on respect, trust, and shared responsibility. They complemented each other in ways that strengthened their small family. Aon brought wisdom, calmness, and guidance, while John brought determination, care, and steadfast love for Lily. Together, they created an environment where Lily could flourish, where each day was an opportunity for learning, laughter, and growth. Their life was far from perfect, of course. There were challenges, moments of worry, and the inevitable difficulties of raising a child in the wilderness. But the difference now was that John no longer faced these challenges alone. He had learned that strength was not about isolation, but about connection, about allowing guidance, love, and support to become a part of life. With Aon by his side, challenges became opportunities, and fears became lessons in resilience and courage. Lily's education and upbringing were a blend of both worlds. Aon taught her the traditions and wisdom of her Apache heritage, the stories of resilience, the respect for nature, and the importance of community and balance. John shared practical skills, lessons from the forest, and stories of family life. Together, they nurtured her curiosity, empathy, and understanding. Lily learned not only about the world around her, but also about the power of love, trust, and guidance. Her childhood was rich with experience, laughter, and security, a gift neither John nor Aon took lightly. The forest that had once felt isolating now felt like an extension of their family. John, Aon, and Lily spent countless hours exploring, learning, and connecting with the natural world. They observed the changing seasons, followed animal tracks, and discovered plants and herbs that Aon used for healing and cooking. These moments became cherished family rituals, bonding them not only to each other but to the world around them. The wilderness was no longer a place of loneliness. It was a place of wonder, discovery, and shared experience. John often reflected on how much his life had changed since the early days of grief and fear. He remembered the nights when he would sit by the fire, exhausted and unsure, wondering if he was capable of raising Lily alone. He remembered the cold, silent winters and the overwhelming sense of solitude that had pressed on his heart. Now, those memories were tinged with gratitude. They reminded him of how far he had come, of the lessons he had learned, and of the unexpected blessings that had entered his life. Aeon had not only guided him as a father, but had also taught him about life itself. She showed him that resilience was born from patience, that love was strengthened by trust, and that joy could be found even in the simplest moments. John had learned to slow down, to notice the beauty around him, and to cherish the small, fleeting moments that made life meaningful. These lessons shaped not only his parenting, but also his worldview, creating a man who was not only strong but also wise and compassionate. As Lily grew older, she began to ask questions about the world and about the stories Aeon had shared. She wanted to know about the history of her people, about the forest, about the traditions that shaped her mother's heritage. John and Aeon answered with patience, encouraging curiosity and critical thinking. They nurtured her sense of wonder, teaching her that knowledge was a gift and that understanding the world was a lifelong journey. Lily's inquisitive mind was a reflection of the love, guidance, and care she had received from both of them. Community also became a part of their lives. John had once shied away from neighbors and villagers, but now he welcomed them into their lives. People came to seek advice, share stories, or simply enjoy the warmth of their home. The cabin, once a place of solitude, had become a place of connection. John realized that while solitude had taught him strength, community had taught him joy. Together with Aeon and Lily, he had built a life that balanced independence with connection, solitude with shared experience, and care with love. One late afternoon, as the sun set behind the mountains and the sky turned shades of gold and orange, John stood outside with Lily on his shoulders, watching the world around them. Aeon moved gracefully through the garden, tending to plants and herbs, her presence calm and grounding. John felt a deep sense of peace. The cabin, the forest, and the people around them were all part of a life he had never imagined possible in his lonely early days. He realized that what had begun as survival had transformed into living fully, a life filled with love, purpose, and hope. John's gratitude for Aeon was immense. She had not merely helped him care for Lily, she had reshaped his life, showing him the meaning of connection, guidance, and trust. Her presence had transformed his grief into resilience, his fear into confidence, and his loneliness into a life of shared joy. He often thought about the moment they had first met in the forest, the cautious encounter that had gradually grown into friendship, partnership, and family. Without her, he knew he would still be struggling alone, lost in the wilderness of both the forest and his own heart. The transformation was most evident in Lily. She had grown into a child full of laughter, curiosity, and empathy. She was confident in her surroundings, aware of the lessons from the forest, the traditions of her heritage, and the love that surrounded her. She understood kindness, respect, and the value of family in ways that exceeded her years. Watching her play, explore, and learn, John felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Every challenge he had faced, every lonely night, and every moment of fear had led him to this life, a life rich with meaning, love, and hope. As the years continued, John and Aeon maintained their partnership in nurturing Lily's growth. They encouraged her to explore, to ask questions, and to express herself openly. They balanced discipline with freedom, guidance with independence, and love with lessons in resilience. Lily thrived under their care, developing a strong sense of self, a deep respect for others, and a profound connection to the natural world. The family had grown not just in number but in strength, understanding, and emotional depth. John often reflected on how different his life had been before Aeon entered it. He remembered the despair, the fear, and the overwhelming sense of solitude. He realized that fate had intervened in unexpected ways, bringing Aeon into their lives at precisely the right moment. Her wisdom, patience, and love had guided him from a life of mere survival into one of true living. She had changed not only his fate but the lives of Lily and himself forever. Even the small routines of daily life now carried meaning. Preparing meals together, tending the garden, exploring the forest, and sharing stories by the fire had become traditions that strengthened their bond. Each day was filled with simple joys that reminded them of the power of love, trust, and shared experience. John understood that life's richness came not from grandeur or wealth, but from these ordinary yet profound moments of connection. As the story of their lives continued to unfold, John knew one truth above all, that he had been given a second chance. The lonely father who had once struggled alone with a baby had become a part of a loving, resilient, and thriving family. Aeon's guidance had been instrumental, but it was his willingness to learn, to trust, and to open his heart that had truly transformed their fate. Together, they had built a life full of hope, love, and enduring connection, a life that would shape Lily's future and create a legacy of compassion, strength, and resilience. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the mountains, John held Lily close, feeling her small hand in his, while Aeon's calm presence anchored them both. In that moment, he understood that the greatest gift of all was not just survival, but the transformation of a lonely existence into a life full of love, joy, and belonging. The Apache woman had changed their fate, but it was their trust, courage, and shared love that had created a family capable of thriving in any circumstance. Life, John realized, was no longer just about enduring. It was about living fully, loving deeply, and embracing the connections that brought meaning and hope. And with Aeon and Lily by his side, he knew that their journey together would continue, full of discovery, growth, and the enduring power of love.